Hello, everybody. It's your boy, Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming. I hit the wrong button there. I didn't mean to shortcast. And we are here in Azdazol's Legacy. Yeah, totally nailed that pronunciation. And today, I thought, you know what? Let's go back to basics. Let's make a video about a current topic while I play the game. That sounds fun, doesn't it? I hope it does, because I'm doing it. So, add-ons. Big thing in the community recently, haven't they? Very big thing. Mainly because of the recent Ultimate, which was a ton of fun to watch, by the way. That was a really cool experience. But it did raise the issue of add-ons in Final Fantasy XIV, a game whose history is kind of based on the don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to add-ons. And it seems lately they're really starting to crack down on them in particular. And starting to dole out some suspensions from what I've seen. And I'd like to talk about them because I used to be a WoW player. And for those who may not be aware, World of Warcraft was a game heavily predicated upon the use of add-ons to augment the visual experience and to give you additional information that the base UI of the game didn't really ever tell you. And for a game like WoW, whose base UI is the equivalent of a refrigerator full of dog crap, that was really appreciated that a community-driven thing like add-ons and like that infrastructure could exist to augment the experience, to make the game just, for some of us, fundamentally better. Things like making the auction house more easy to use and more user-friendly. Things like displaying just combat information in a more cohesive and clear and customizable way to fit our preferences. You probably have heard things like LVUI. I used LVUI back in the day when I played WoW. It was really good. I hated how it looked visually, because it just conflicted so massively with the aesthetic of World of Warcraft, but the mechanical advantages of LVUI just overruled any concern I had about how it looked aesthetically to me. And I've heard that 14 has similar things to LVUI. I'm not going to talk about them here. But the game seems to be cracking down, and the developers really seem to be cracking down on the use of these customizable units of the AI. UI, not AI, sorry, just had coffee. And seems to be cracking down on add-ons and, well, hacks, but I think we can all agree that we're in favor of them cracking down on hacks and stuff like that. I haven't really experienced anything like that, but I don't play PvP that much. So, I don't have enough experience to talk about that, so I'm not going to. But I feel like we've always had this sword of Damocles just overhanging the community in this regard in terms of add-ons and stuff like that, to where they've always said, we are not in favor of this, they are flatly forbidden. They are, in their words, strictly forbidden. Oh, let me just try and move out of this mechanic. There we go. Clean as a whistle. But they seem to be really doubling down on that because, yeah, they always said that in the past, but let's be honest, it was always more of a don't ask, don't tell policy, like I said at the top of this video, where if you just don't brag about it and don't, like, harass people with information you got from add-ons, they never really could care. But it seems they're starting to, and for those who try and obfuscate the issue as if the World First Race wasn't a major catalyst for this, I'm just saying, you're kind of just denying the reality of the situation. Because the reality of the situation is we're getting those clear videos, and that the Race to World First for Dragonsong Ultimate was massively popular throughout the community. It drew a lot of live stream numbers and all that. A lot of clips came from it, a lot of discussion came from it. And when you're in the position of your TOS strictly forbidding add-ons and augmented experiences like that, and you start to congratulate groups who have clearly used them in their clear videos, you start to provide a conflict of interest in a way. Or not necessarily a conflict of interest, but a bit of hypocrisy there. Because you're telling everybody else not to use them, but you're congratulating the people who did. You can see the issue there from their perspective. And I'm pretty sure that's probably their main concern here. Because they even said, look, if you people keep using them in these clear videos and for these Race the World First, we're just not going to be able to congratulate you like we have been in the past. Which does suck, but I can kind of understand where they're coming from. Again, I'm always on the favor of more communication generally being a rule of thumb to be better than not having communication. So, clearly telling us, okay, don't do this, 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 and this, even though they said that they can't do that for 100% of the cases. For at least the most popular ones, I think a brief word of comment would be appreciated. I get that there might be a concern that if they specifically call out specific add-ons, that they might drive people towards those add-ons. I don't really think that's a good enough excuse not to give more communication on this issue. That's just a personal thing for me. Feel free to disagree. But I don't... But like they said in their statement, which I'm going to have linked down below, by the way, for those who want to read it, they are looking for things from add-ons that they might be able to incorporate into the game. Because you have to take into consideration that it's not only people on PC who play this game. You also have a large console PlayStation population of people who play this game. I know some people that play this game on console. Or egads with a freaking controller. I know the game's perfectly fine with playing a controller. I know that people have played Ultimates by using controller. It's just over 10 plus years of playing MMOs with mouse and keyboard, it just doesn't compute in my brain. But there are some things I think that could be added to the base UI to enhance the experience and make for a better, overall, more cohesive experience. And that's what I really want to focus on in this video. I'm not going to go on for like 30 minutes or anything like that. But I do think there are some things that we can take from add-ons, like, say, in World of Warcraft, which is the main example and what I have to talk about, because I don't use add-ons in Final Fantasy XIV. I don't even have a damage meter. But I did in WoW. So that's going to be where most of my basis for critique here will stem from. Now, the main one, I think, a lot of people who care about personal performance, even if you don't clear high-end rating like myself, but you still care about getting better to some degree, a personalized damage meter would be very appreciated in this regard, just to have standardized into the game, where we don't have to talk about it in hushed tones or anything like that. Now, I understand the concern that if you have a damage meter for everybody in your party, that can breed, in a sense, for lack of a better term, toxicity, by giving the player information to harass others with. I don't think that's a decent enough excuse to have information obfuscated from the player baseline. Because there are people who genuinely do not care about what other people do and just want to have some tools that they can use to better their own experience. Because sure, you can go to the combat log in the bottom left corner of the screen and the chat log, but let's be honest, who's going to do that, right? People like having real-time information to be able to track this information so they can get better. They like to be able to use resources out there to tell them, hey, you use this ability at this specific timing. If you used it, say, 5 seconds later, you would better align with other buffs from the party, so you would have overall provided more damage contribution. That is information on a personal level that is appreciated, so that we as players can get better at the game. And I don't think the fear that people might be a bit rude in a party chat warrants not having that information available to the player. Even if you just make it so you can only see your own personal numbers, or maybe you can see your own personal numbers in accordance with party-wide or raid-wide buffs, I feel that would at least be fine baseline. Oh, I gotta res my party up here. Of course, I already used Quick Cast. Swift Cast, that's what it's called. Okay, let's just do this again. But yeah, I'm in favor of more information to the player, as a general rule of thumb. And I feel like a personalized damage meter could really be beneficial to just overall improving the skill of the player base at large, even if you restrict it in such a way to where you can't see what numbers other people are pulling, if you really have that fear as a developer, or that concern, probably more a better term, that it could be used to make the overall experience lesser because of increased use of harassment or toxicity in the community. If you have that fear, even a personalized damage meter, like I said, would probably be for the best. And I would like to see stuff like that. Other things I would like to see are just overall more UI customizability. Like, again, I come from WoW. I had LVUI, which is arguably the king of this, in accordance with also things like weak ores. Now, weak ores are an incredibly powerful tool, because they allow you to essentially code information into the UI. They're incredibly powerful. They allow you to display information, both personalized as well as across the fight, which overall wouldn't have. So I'm not saying to basically give deadly boss mods or bigwigs as baseline in Final Fantasy. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is we can have more ways to give players information. For instance, having a separate hot boss system so that I can put basically weak ores on my screen to track buffs or to track when certain cooldowns are up again. I can kind of do that in a way with the base UI by just making a separate hotbar for certain abilities, but that leaves a lot to be desired, especially when you come from a world where you have so much more customization in that regard with weak ores. So I feel that having something like that could be optional, but baseline in the UI would go a long way to help just, for those who care about their own personal performance, to have an easier time and to just have a more overall enjoyable experience. Because there's some people out there that like toying with their own UI and trying to find a personal style for themselves that makes the game just overall more enjoyable. I'm one of those people. Again, this is all information that you can have baseline, but just given to the player in a more cohesive way and in a more streamlined fashion. So things like buff trackers, cooldown trackers, debuff trackers, or even, instead of having numbers down here, allowing the player to have a separate interface, so I can just put like a box, kind of like the light party system on the, say, my right side of the screen, where my Bahamut is right now, where I can track all my debuffs or dots if I'm playing a dot job, and they could be in a bar that physically drains across the screen, so I have a more visual way where I don't just have to look at a freaking number all the time. Again, more options tend to be for the better as a general rule of thumb for me, and that's what I would like to see. I feel it could go a long way to just overall improving the experience of the UI more than it already is, because I've played quite a few MMOs in my day, and Final Fantasy XIV is up there for some of the best for me. I love how customizable it is, but again, there's always room for improvement. And these small things that may seem small and inconsequential right now, because again, you can play the game perfectly, you can get rank 1 bosses in ultimates all you want with the base UI. I'm not saying that like mandatory or anything. I'm just saying for players who, like me, who may not even do high-end rating or high-end content where that information is probably the most critical, having stuff like this where it can just make an overall easier and more enjoyable experience has value and adds to the overall experience. Because there are some people who have just fundamentally different preferences to you and me. And that's fine. That's fine. There are some people who play World of Warcraft with an UI add-on that changes it to be very reminiscent of the Guild Wars 2 UI. Because that is a UI, either aesthetically or mechanically, that they really appreciate. Is it completely optimized for the World of Warcraft experience? No, but it doesn't have to be. Because it makes that player have a more enjoyable time. And I feel we don't need to have that level of customization in 14, but you see what I'm talking about when I'm saying if we add more options for the player, where they don't have to be baseline, but we have them as options, that can just make someone else's experience better, and I think that has value. And I don't think you have to design fights around having the most optimized visual experience possible when it comes to this game. Whereas, like, if you're not using these buff trackers in a specific way, you won't be able to tell quick enough whether or not you need to use this ability at this specific second or anything like that. When you start designing a fight like that, in regards to having add-ons in mind, that's when I think you go too far. And it doesn't seem like 14 does that at all, which is what I appreciate about it. But I don't think that means we can just completely ignore possibilities to make the UI a more enjoyable, more customizable experience. Even if it's already good, we can always make it better. And that's my main point here throughout this video, the main point I want to get across. Like, yeah, if you're streaming with add-ons, you have always been playing with a risk. Even if they have not specifically suspended accounts or anything like that, they've always kind of held that sort of Damocles over you, to where it was always a possibility. And it's just now that they're actually cracking down on it. And sure, we can always argue for more transparency and more communication. And generally, when it comes to that critique about almost any gaming company, I will be on your side in that regard. Because I'm generally a fan of communication, being more open with your player base. And so one of the things that actually drew me to Final Fantasy XIV was the fact that the dev team seems to be very open in comparison to a lot of other developers and a lot of other companies that produce and create video games. And I like having that transparency, I like having that communication open, and I like thinking that our critique actually means something and that they're paying attention to it. And they did specifically say that they are looking into the most popular add-ons in the post, that again will be linked in the description down below, that they are specifically looking at the most popular ones and seeing what they can possibly implement into the base UI. Because again, the main problem with Final Fantasy XIV specifically, in regards to UI add-ons and stuff like that, is the fact we have a sizable console population, and I don't think it's right, or that we should, inherently punish those players for playing on a different system. I think that just produces an overall lesser experience. I don't like punishing players because they happen to buy a different plastic box than me. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's a game design decision, and neither do they, that they want to incorporate into the game. So, I say, find the things that are most popular in the community, in terms of UI customization particularly, and try and implement that into the base UI. And I think that would not only make the PC experience better, it would also help show that the dev team has even more communication with the player base, and to be trying to be more open. But also, it would enhance the experience of players who play on console. And I think that has value, because we play with those players. I would like them to be able to play the game easier and to be able to get information easier. I just died there because I wasn't paying attention. Copium. But yeah. Those are overall my thoughts. Let me just give a commendation here. Give it to the healer. There you go. My noble commendation. Ooh, the maps. Let's try and go for this. I did not get that. Pass. I'll pass on that. You know what? I'll let everybody else have this. So yeah, those are just my thoughts generally on the add-on situation in Final Fantasy XIV. Basis of my critique TLDR. More communication, more openness is always for the better for me, generally as a rule of thumb. I don't mind having a personalized damage meter where I can at least see my own personal performance, so I can get personally better. More UI customization as a general rule of thumb would be appreciated, having more options, expanding on that, and expanding upon the existing infrastructure. I think that would be for the best, and that's what I personally would like to see. So, more options in how to display information. Like this right here. Weakness. This could be a bar that I could toggle or keep like as it is. A bar that goes maybe over to here. And it just drains down. So I can just quickly look at a glance, see where the bar is, and go, okay, weakness is about to go off. I don't have to look at it and then look at the number. Because again, it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but for me personally, I prefer that visual experience of not having to read a number, but be able to just see where the bar is. To know, okay, this is about to come off cooldown. Or maybe I can have the bar and the number, if that's a personal thing I like.